Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, where I have a guest come on and we learn a little bit about their film and their perspective on films. And this time I have my friend Chelsa here, who I actually went to college with. So it's been a while. So now we get to chat some movies and catch up a little bit. So I'm going to let Chelsa introduce herself.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Shane. So my name is Chelsa. Right before COVID, I spent the past 3 years living in Japan. It was definitely the best experience of my life. And recently I decided to pursue my passion for art. So I've been trying to put myself out there as an artist, and a lot of my art is definitely influenced from Japan and my experience there. I love anime. A lot of the things I'll be talking about today will be kind of anime movies, but not just limited to that, all different kinds of things. But yeah, so that's just a little bit about me, and I'm really excited to be here and interviewing with you, Shane. Thank you.
Awesome. And I'm glad to have you here, Chelsa, and I look forward to talking a lot about some anime. So I'd like to start things off as I always start things off and ask, what's your favorite film?
My favorite film is definitely Your Name. And although it's a more recent film, it came out as soon as I moved to Japan within my first few months there. And I've always liked anime films, but I feel like that one just really resonated with me and my experience living in Japan. And I think it's a really moving film. I think it's beautifully animated, and I love the storyline and the characters. So I think Your Name is my favorite.
Awesome. I remember seeing that in the theaters because I had my friend Kevin over, and it just so happened like your name popped up at AMC Hamilton when I was living up near Ryder, and I'm like, hey Kevin, you want to go to the movies? And so we went and got to go see it and blew me away. It's over on my shelf over there, actually.
Really? Oh,
It's a great film. So if you haven't seen Your Name, you should all go out and check it out and show it some love. So I felt a little bad because I had seen it at AMC Hamilton, and
cool.
then God, like it didn't get like an actual release in the US for like
Yeah.
another like months after that. It must have been some kind of special screening because like months later, my brother's like, "Oh my God, Your Name came out. You want to go see it?" I'm like, "Solid." And I'm like, but my brother's a huge fan of anime, so honestly, a decent amount of the anime that I've seen, I watched with him.
That's
But
awesome. I didn't know that. Cool.
yes, my brother is very much a huge fan of anime, loves all kinds of nerdy stuff, like, but he doesn't really lead it on. Besides the fact that he
Okay.
cosplays all the time. So
Well, that's pretty big. Cosplaying is a pretty big indicator that you like anime.
at a I remember in high school he was definitely a closet nerd. Like he
I
literally had
feel like,
everything
yeah,
stuff in his closet.
especially like with our generation, I feel like a lot of us in high school, if we were anime nerds, we had to be closet nerds because so much, like, I don't know, a lot of people like sort of picked on you. But I feel like with the newer generations, it's becoming a little bit more acceptable, and I'm really happy about that because anime deserves love.
I think it's a little cooler nowadays. I've never been cool, so I
Yeah,
was
I've
learning
never.
curve. So
I know. I see people post things on the internet, and they're like, "Oh, side parts aren't cool. This isn't cool." And I'm like, "Well, I wasn't cool when I was 13, so I don't think I'm gonna be cool to 13-year-olds now." Like, I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. I love anime though, and I've always really loved it. So
it's funny working with college students and working at a college because like they think you're like the coolest thing if you like things that they like. And I'm like, I have never once felt cool my whole entire life. And you're all like, oh my God, my professor likes this.
oh, that's really awesome. And I'm sure that you're making a really good influence on your students.
Oh, well, thank you. I do my best. I want them to like math and statistics, which is not exactly
Oh,
the easiest thing. So we do our best. But yeah,
yeah.
it's taken me a long time to get into anime. Like my brother has been watching it for years and he like, you should watch this with me. You should watch this with me. I'm like, I have enough trouble trying to keep up with American stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So much content, but it's definitely been awesome jumping into a lot of anime. I'm sure we'll talk more about it. But
Yeah.
now, Chelsea, what's your earliest memory of going to the movies?
My earliest memory of going to the movies was seeing James and the Giant Peach because when I was in the theaters, I remember crying hysterically and being terrified. But then I went home and I told my mom I want to watch it again and again and again. And then I like wouldn't stop watching it. So
Was it the rhinoceros? Was it the really giant, creepy looking bugs? Was it the like the ghost pirates? You know, there's a lot of things to be potentially creeped out as a kid,
yeah.
which is actually interesting about James and the Giant Peach because that is actually celebrating its 25th anniversary this month.
No way. That's awesome. I had no idea.
The only reason I
Wow.
know that is because I have my article series, the Wasteland Vintage Roadshow on Scribe Magazine, and I was looking up movies that like are celebrating anniversaries for me to write about,
Hmm.
and I will be writing an article about James and the Giant Peach.
Well,
So
I look forward to seeing your article on it.
it's I loved watching that as a kid. Loved it so much. I really love stop motion animation and
Yeah.
like it was so interesting and weird with
Yeah.
how it looked, and it's from Henry Selick, who's the same director as Nightmare Before Christmas.
Hmm.
It was his follow-up because it still says Tim Burton's blah, even
Yeah.
though technically he didn't direct them, but they definitely have that feel to them. But I remember seeing, I'm trying to remember if I saw that in theaters or not, but I definitely watched that a lot as a kid. So,
Yeah, I was very intrigued by it, but my first impression was definitely, I think it was also one of my first times being in the theater, being surrounded by people in a place I wasn't comfortable. But then I just remember once it came out, I was telling my mom I wanted to watch it constantly. So it definitely influenced my taste in film moving forward, I think.
that's the thing. A lot of those kinds of movies as a kid, it's just like they have that kind of impact on you moving forward. It's
Hmm.
like I was like an 8-year-old watching a bunch of James Bond movies. What do I still watch
Yeah,
now? James Bond.
James Bond.
I am chomping at the bit. It's like, when's No Time to Die coming out?
Hmm.
Supposed to have come out over a year ago at this point, but
Yeah.
it's the times that we're in.
Mhm.
Now, Chelsea, what's your favorite genre of movies?
I think you already know, but anime. Just anything that's anime. Just I think also having my family being even though I know I don't look it, but my grandmother being Japanese and my having been to Japan every year in my childhood, just you see a lot of it on the television there. It's
Mhm.
very common there since it's their style of art. And I just always really enjoyed it from a young age. So it's always been my like comfort genre, I think. Just
Yeah.
anime.
And it definitely has a lot of range in what you can do with animation,
Yeah.
obviously. And that's the cool thing about like fantasy. Some of the greatest fantasy movies are animated because it's like you could do anything. And
Yeah.
like look at Studio Ghibli, you could have from Spirited Away to Grave of the Fireflies and everything in between.
Exactly. It's
Which
unlimited what you can do.
one of the Instagram pages that I follow, Magic of Film, they're doing an animated top animated film tournament right now. And this 2 days ago, the vote was between Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke, and I'm like,
My vote is between Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke. Those are literally my two favorite Ghibli films, so I wouldn't even know which one to choose.
I voted Princess Mononoke, but Spirited Away kind of handily won it, which I'm not
Yeah,
surprised because like Spirited Away is amazing, an
yeah,
absolutely amazing film, but I like the darker and more intense story that you get with Princess Mononoke and the
yeah.
action and everything. That opening scene with that giant boar is nuts.
Yeah, that it's just such a deep movie, and I just feel like there's so much emotion that went into Princess Mononoke. Whereas when I look at Spirited Away, it kind of feels like a dream or a fantasy. And I just like those two different aspects of like the emotion and intensity of Princess Mononoke, but then like the new world that you enter in Spirited Away. So
Yeah. And you can have things like light and fun like Kiki's Delivery Service, and you can have
Yeah.
things that like devastate you emotionally, like Grave of the Fireflies,
Yeah.
which like you wouldn't think that movie needed to be animated. Could easily have just been a live action drama, but going in, a lot of people are just like, "Oh, it's animated. It's family friendly, right?" Don't go into that movie expecting something family friendly.
Yeah, exactly. Like Studio Ghibli in general like markets themselves towards children, and the movies are for children typically, but some of them are just so deep and powerful. Like it doesn't seem like a children's movie anymore.
Well, and that's interesting too because anime has a very different feel to it than like American animation.
Yes.
There's a whole different atmosphere and pace to them. Because, like, you watch American animation, usually it's like kid pace. Everything's fast and flying, and there's probably musical numbers every couple of minutes, and it needs to be big, bright, loud. And then you watch something like from Miyazaki, and it's just so contemplative and beautiful
Yeah.
and mature in that way. And not that I don't love American animation, because I do,
Hmm.
but it definitely has a very different feel to it. And like you could have films like Akira and Ghost in the Shell that are so intense and inventive. And Akira is definitely one of the weirdest movies I think I've ever watched.
Yes, Akira is definitely weird, but in a good way.
Yes, absolutely in a good way. Now, I think I kind of transitioned into this next question since I think I know
Yeah.
your answer to this one, but who is your favorite filmmaker?
Yeah, we pretty much just discussed it, but definitely Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli. I think if I have to choose one filmmaker, even if it's not like I know Your Name is my favorite film and that's not Ghibli, but I just feel like overall as a whole, I just look up to him as a person so much, and I think that his the atmosphere of his films are just it's just incredible like what the different worlds he can bring you into. I know I've said that before, but yep,
Yeah.
I'd say he's my favorite filmmaker.
One of my favorite event kinds of things to go to the movies for is Ghibli Fest every year. When they each month they release a Studio Ghibli film through Fathom events at like AMC and stuff like that. And I remember there was one year I was going to go to all of them, and then stuff happened. But I got through like half of the year and got to see like Ponyo and Porco Rosso and
Oh, yeah, Ponyo and Pocoroso are both good. Wow, cool. I'm glad you saw some good ones.
yeah, because Ponyo, that wasn't the first time I saw it, but that was
Mhm.
a fun time seeing it in a theater. I hadn't seen Porco Rosso before, so that was like,
Porcoroso's weird. It's another weird one.
here is Italian people. And that's the interesting thing too, because it's like you think about how in like America we make films about all kinds of different countries and cultures and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then it's just like, oh, this Japanese film's about Italy. And it's just like that shouldn't be like a weird thing, seeing as we decide that we can make basically anything about anything. So I'm like, it's an
Yeah,
interesting feel of like, this is Japanese perspective on Italy. And it's a fun movie. It is weird
yeah.
though. It's like you have a large pig man as your main character
It's different for sure.
for sure. Now, Chelsea, who are your favorite actors and actresses?
Okay, I don't actually I feel like I don't look into actors and actresses in their daily lives as people so much. And I tend to fall in love with characters in different films. But if there's anyone that I really think every time I just see her face, I love her so much, it's Helena Bonham Carter.
Okay.
I feel like it could be like a nostalgic thing or just the roles that she plays. I always feel like she is just so cool, whether it be in a Tim Burton film or Harry Potter or something like that. It's just I just always think that she is so cool. So I'd say that if I had to pick a favorite actress, it would be her.
There's a next level chaotic evil when you look at Bellatrix Lestrange.
Yes.
And of course, like basically at least half of Tim Burton's movies probably have Helena Bonham Carter in them.
Yeah.
And She always brings it, and it's interesting because like I've seen films of her younger before she had like even started starring in Tim Burton
Like a
movies.
lot of period pieces, right? In her
Yes.
early age.
And crap, what the hell was it? It was, I don't think it was Passage to India. It might have been Passage to India or Room with a View or something like that. And just like there were, yes, there were, she was like, she's British, gonna be in a bunch of period pieces. Cause what else do you do when you're British? Make a bunch of period pieces. And obviously she really embodied that very gothic kind of look throughout
Yeah, I think her
Tim
look is
Burton
big.
movies.
Yeah.
That very like German expressionist look of everything's like abstract and strange and black grays. And I
Hmm.
know her singing wasn't my favorite in
Yeah, no,
Todd.
Sweeney Todd, yeah. Her and Johnny Depp both. I'm like, why are you singing? Like,
Well,
but
you know why they're both in the movie because it's a Tim Burton movie, but like
yeah,
people
yeah. Their aesthetic worked with it. Like, just seeing them, just,
yes.
yes, their look worked, but the singing.
Because like that was my first introduction to Sweeney Todd. So like I didn't really know a whole lot about
Oh,
like
me too. Me too.
the musical, and
Yeah,
going
same.
back and listening to some of like the stage performances and be like Angela Lansbury was Mrs. Lovitz, and Angela Lansbury is amazing, and I'm like, oh, now this just makes it even harder for me to watch this movie.
Yeah.
And like Sweeney Todd usually has a very deep, very intense masculine voice. I'm like, not who I would have picked in terms of like Johnny Depp,
Yeah.
but they definitely have the look down. They definitely do in
Yeah.
that whole aesthetic.
Yeah.
Now, Chelsea, do you have any particular movies that you feel like you could just watch every day?
It definitely am now going back to Miyazaki again, but I feel like more the Kiki's Delivery Service and Spirited Away side. Just whenever I'm feeling sad and I need a comfort movie, I usually watch like I don't know if you've ever seen Arrietty. Arrietty is one of his
Yeah.
lesser known ones, but there's just certain ones where um like the happier ones, I suppose, are the ones I could watch. Like Princess Mononoke, I usually say if someone asks me what's my favorite, I say that, but that's definitely not a movie I could watch every day. But the happy Miyazaki ones are definitely my everyday go-to.
Well, and that's the thing too, because it's like sometimes you might love a film, but you need to emotionally prepare sometimes for some of those films. And
Yeah.
it's just like I could love like a film like well, and that's an interesting thing. For me personally, I could basically throw on any movie at any time,
Yeah,
except
that's you.
except for Schindler's List. That's like a whole other level of like you need to emotionally prepare for stuff like that. And maybe Grave of the Fireflies. I don't think I could just throw that on.
Yeah, that's the Miyazaki I can't put on every day. Like things that are just a little bit too intense.
But like Arrietty, based off of like The Borrowers and stuff like that, it's a cute little film. No pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah, cute little film.
Cute little film with cute little characters.
Yeah.
And but like Key's Delivery Service is just such a nice,
Oh,
sweet little movie, and like she's learning to be a witch. She has her little cat,
yeah, I feel like Kiki's is usually what I put on when I just want to like smile.
and that's fair. That's always a good thing. Now, Chelsea, do you have any films that you feel like you connect with on a deeper level because they relate to an interest of yours?
I think when I think of a film that relates to an interest of mine and just overall, there's so many aspects of it, so many different aspects that I feel like myself relating to is actually Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Okay.
So whether it be the anime references, the video game references, just Ramona Flowers and knives both in general, like I feel like just so many parts about Scott Pilgrim versus the World. If I have to pick a movie that I feel my interests are connected with, it's that one.
And that's a good choice, especially for like anybody who grew up loving video games. It's basically this is a video game come to life. And
Yeah.
it's, well, it literally is. It's structured that whole entire way, and it's a lot of fun. And all those crazy X's. And
Yes.
it's so weird to think because like that movie came out like I think that was like 2010.
Yeah, like 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago.
and it was celebrating its 10-year anniversary last year. And then you think about
Okay.
all the people that's in that movie, and I'm like, Captain America's in this, playing a complete jerk guy with like a leather jacket skateboarder. And it's just like, when Chris Evans was still playing assholes in all of his movies. And then you look at Michael Cera now and you're just like, oh my God, you're like an adult.
Yeah, Chris Evans and Michael Cera have definitely changed a lot since Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Well, and like this, like the crazy thing is, it's like Aubrey Plaza's in it in such a small role. I'm like, A plus.
I never even thought of that Aubrey Plaza's in it. Wow, that's true.
And you have Kieran Culkin in it, who's now like an Emmy nominated actor because of the HBO show Succession. And who put Anna Kendrick plays his sister. And you're
Yeah,
just
yeah, Anna
like
Kendrick.
that, and Brie Larson's in it. And it's just like, and they all look so young, and it's just like, crap, how long has the past 10 years
I
been?
know. What, like, where did that 10 years go? How old are we? I still feel like a teenager sometimes.
Well, that's a funny thing because in 2010 we went into college.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
So,
past fall was 10 years since I started at Ryder as a student.
yeah. And now you're
Yeah.
working with college students. It's crazy how time just flies.
Yeah, it was so funny when I first started as assistant director when I was 24. I'm like, oh, I'm not that much older than you. And now I'm like, I'm 10 years older than these freshmen.
Yeah,
It's a weird
it
feeling.
is. I'm sure it is, but I think being surrounded by them all the time, you probably get used to it, but it's still definitely weird. Definitely date ourselves sometimes with
Well,
our
I think
age.
the funniest thing was I was talking to some of my students who love video games and love movies who are in my class, and I brought up how all of my friends used to play Yu-Gi-Oh in the second floor lounge of Ziegler on our freshman year, and
Yu-Gi-Oh!
they started laughing at Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm like, wow, the amount of time I spent dueling. And it's just like that's what we grew up with, that and
Yeah.
Pokemon, and I still play a lot of Pokemon.
Yeah.
Got to catch them all in Pokemon Go. And
Yeah.
obviously, like being a gamer and playing games and stuff like that. And it's interesting how all the nostalgia comes back around. Like I spent $60 buying that Mario All Stars remaster
Okay.
for the Switch, which apparently people are selling for $1,500 because they're no longer in print.
What? That's crazy.
They're stupid. Nobody would possibly spend that much money on that game. I don't know what they're thinking trying to
Yeah.
do that. But see, it's the impact of gaming on life. And like obviously, like Scott Pilgrim was very obviously written by somebody who loves video games.
Yes, for sure.
And so my next question is more focusing on a character.
Mhm.
So Chelsea, who's a movie character that you feel like you connect with on a personal level?
So, I have to mention Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And I feel like if there's a character that I relate to specifically from any movie, it's Clementine. I just remember, especially with how young I was when I saw Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind for the first time, I felt so much less alone when I saw a character like her because I just felt like, oh, these things that I think are so weird and so strange about myself, like maybe I'm not so weird and so strange. Maybe this is something like other people feel this way. And it was really reassuring for me. And I feel like I learned a lot about myself through Clementine. And yeah, so if there's any character I've ever really related to, it's Clem.
I remember watching that film in college for the first time because I didn't see it until college. And I had some very strong feelings about it the first time I watched it because it's such a very specific idea that it's trying to come across with, of that idea of what would you do after a horrible breakup? Would you want to like literally forget everything and erase it from your mind, or live with all of that trauma? And that being somebody who never really forgets anything. And I remember watching that film, I'm like, I had a lot of problems trying to connect with Jim Carrey's character. I'm like, I would never want to make this decision, because it's like you think about that, everything that you go through helps you build to be the person that you are. And what happens if you lose out on those pieces of what happened to you? Does that change you?
Hmm.
And that movie, more I thought and sat and thought about, I'm like, oh my God, I can't stop thinking about this movie. And those kinds of films when it's like it makes you think that deeply about something that's very relatable. I think we've all been through things that we'd probably rather forget. But would you make that choice?
Yeah, I don't think Jim Carrey even wanted to make that choice, though. It was just her who just on a whim decided to go up and make that choice.
Yeah.
So it was all Clem. But then how do you cope with something that everyone else around you is in denial that it ever happened? She physically doesn't remember that it ever happened. So it's almost like he had no choice in a way. Not that he had no choice. He could have went either way, but definitely wasn't something I think he would choose to do on his own.
Well, and that's an interesting thing too, because it adds that layer of what would you do if the other person made that decision? Like, could you live with being attached to that memory that doesn't exist anymore for that person?
Exactly.
And even if it's not in a literal sense, like in the film, it's a very interesting perspective on like, I've been through breakups where I know the person kind of like pushed me to the back of their mind and didn't really think about it,
We all have.
didn't want to think about it.
Yeah.
And I still thought about it
Yeah,
all that
interesting.
time. And it's a very relevant breakup seeing as it was unbroken up that like I'm in a relationship with said person again with Jess.
Yeah. Oh, it's so connected. That's so cool.
Well, and it's funny because when we saw each other again for the first time after like years at that point, it took her aback because I was like the same exact person last time she saw me. And I'm like, I am who I am. It's just like, obviously, Chelsea, you've known me for, I guess, like 8 years at
Yeah,
this
eight
point because we
years.
met, I think, when we were juniors in college.
Hmm.
And it's just like, not very much different than when I was then. I'm a little more confident and sure of myself
That's
with that.
good. I'm happy to hear that.
But like, I'm still the same kind of person, still make the same dumb jokes that and those are the funny things. And one of the things that I love about that film, it's like at certain stages in your relationship, it's like those things that you love. And then depending on how that relationship goes, you learn to hate them about
It's
that
true.
person.
Yeah.
And Eternal Sunshine really captures that kind of thing in terms of relationships because we all have our quirks.
Hmm.
And I know Jess said that she couldn't drive past a Perkins without thinking of me, which I have that effect on people apparently,
With Perkins or just with anything?
just with Perkins.
Just with Perkins. That's funny.
I love Perkins. It's my favorite
Okay.
place to eat.
Now
So
every time I drive past the Perkins, I'll be thinking of you too. That's so
see, and
funny.
I have that effect on people. So anybody watching this video, you're probably gonna think about this when you drive past a Perkins. Now, in terms of Chelsea, do you have a film that you love that you think would surprise people?
This is we touched on it a little before, but Akira, I feel like it's so not my genre. I don't really delve into a lot of sci-fi. Not to say I don't like sci-fi. There are some that I like. And I know it's animated, but even with the animation I do like, I feel like Akira is just so different from the normal animation that I like, and it's such a there's the story, the characters. Usually I like movies for characters, and one thing I have to say about Akira is the characters aren't so lovable in that movie. So whereas I pretty much base a lot of my movie interests on characters, I feel like Akira is like you don't really fall in love with anyone in that movie, and it's more the story and the intensity of the movie itself. And I just feel like it's one of the biggest anime masterpieces of all time, and it just goes so against the typical movie I usually like.
Which is crazy in that tournament that I mentioned earlier, it went head to head with Spirited Away and
Hmm.
lost to Spirited Away,
Yeah.
which it's I would put it up there with most
Yeah.
live action movies in
Yeah.
terms of how amazing it is, and the action, it's intense, it's absolutely beautiful. The way that they animate light in that with like the giant beams coming down and everything is breathtaking and beautiful.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is it's like that was from the 80s. Um,
Exactly.
and it's just like while like this is Akira over here, you're getting like Oliver and Company and
Yeah.
stuff like that from Disney, and you're just like, it's so crazy to think about this movie was made probably at least 30, almost 35 years ago, and it's that gorgeous and breathtaking and
Yeah.
intense
Kira
and
was ahead of its time for sure.
takes you places and some crazy places and
Mhm.
deals with that idea of like what if the person who has like superpowers and stuff like that isn't good
Mhm.
and it's scary and like there wouldn't be like I don't know if you've seen Chronicle
I
before.
haven't.
It's a found footage small budget superhero film
Okay.
about a group of teenagers that get these powers, and then one of them naturally like isolated by society and stuff like that becomes a villain, and it's more or less Akira, and I'm like that
Okay.
wouldn't exist without Akira. And I remember
Interesting.
watching Akira, I'm like, wait a minute, and I'm just sitting there, it's like this is how influential that is.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's not what you would expect from an animated movie, and honestly I think that obviously has to do a lot to do with our expectations, especially in America, of what animation is. Because I feel like there's still tons of people who are just like, animation's kids' movies. And it's just like,
Yes, definitely.
um, no, it doesn't have to be. Trust
Yeah.
me, I've definitely seen some animated movies that definitely weren't made for kids. I literally started my YouTube channel reviewing Sausage Party, not for kids. Do not take your kids.
I haven't seen Sausage Party, but by the name alone, I could imagine that's not for kids.
Oh, it's not. Well, because it's like it's from James Franco and Seth Rogen and all
Okay.
of
Yeah, James
them.
Franco and Seth Rogen, not for kids again.
Nope. It was so weird seeing like hearing Seth Rogen in the new Lion King as Pumbaa. I'm just like waiting for you to like drop an F word or talk about smoking weed or something like that. And but like it's so interesting the what you can do with animation. So
Yeah.
if you haven't seen Akira, go see it. All of you out there. Now, Chelsea, my last question for you is what do you love most about movies?
I think, it's crazy how much we touched upon this when we were talking about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but my favorite thing about movies is how you can learn so much empathy from movies. So perspectives that you would never feel before from other people, other cultures, other languages, like just so many other things, just things that being at your school, being around your family, there's only so much empathy you can learn. But I think when you watch movies, since they're from all over the world and from so many different mindsets, you can learn to be empathetic and understand people that you wouldn't understand before. So when we talked about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, I was like, wow, that's exactly like why I love movies. And also with like movies like A Silent Voice, if you've seen A Silent Voice,
I don't think I've seen that one.
oh, I definitely recommend it, but it's definitely one of the more emotional animated films I've ever seen, and the girl is hearing impaired, and just I watched it and I was like, all children should see this movie to better understand a perspective that they don't understand. It's a lot about bullying, and
Mhm.
it actually takes the perspective of the bully, and I think the really cool thing about it is just you almost in some ways you feel bad for the bully, and not to say that what he was doing was right, but it really brings you to both of their perspectives. And I think it's a really interesting way to look at something you might not understand in your daily life. And I just like all around in general, I think my favorite thing about movies is that you can learn empathy from movies and learn about people that you might not learn about in your daily life.
And I really appreciate your answer because I've learned so much about all different kinds of people because I've watched so many different movies. And you really, and that's a thing too, especially when you grow up in a small town where like you can count the number of minority students on one hand in your graduating class.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes they'd be able to escape and connect with other people and other perspectives is through art. And
Yeah.
film is a very special one because you can be transported
Ah,
into their experiences. And also, I realized Silent Voice is on my watch list because it was
woo!
on that bracket tournament. And I'm like, I haven't seen that one. I need to watch it. So
Please do.
I'll let you know what I think about it when I do get a
Yes,
chance to watch it.
please do. It's really good. I think you'll like it.
So that was my last question. But so I like to wrap things up with having my guest ask me a question. So, what would you like to ask me?
My question for you is, I suppose it's a little self-serving, but we could talk about movies or TV shows. So a movie or a TV show,
Okay,
one or a few. But if you had to pick a favorite anime, what would your favorite anime be?
that is a good question. Because in terms of films, I think Princess Mononoke is my
Princess
favorite.
Mononoke. Yeah.
And it's a tough one because like there's so many great Studio Ghibli films, and like I love Akira and I love Ghost in the Shell, but like Princess Mononoke, I remember watching pieces of that when I was a kid. I was at my neighbor's house and they had this on and it scared the crap out of me. Like the opening of the movie because it's so intense, and watching it as an adult and it being absolutely breathtakingly beautiful and dark, and you just get taken on such a great adventure. And then thinking of anime shows, I actually so Chelsea actually has recommended anime to me. So I remember started watching Hunter x Hunter, and I really enjoyed that show a lot. And if I had to pick a show that I enjoy the most that I've watched that's an anime, it's definitely My Hero
My
Academia.
hero. Yeah.
Like I love comic books and comic book movies and stuff like that, and like having a whole entire thing that feels like this is basically X-Men, except with all their quirks and stuff like that is such a fun time. But there's been some other ones that I've watched. Like I remember watching Death Note and just being like,
Oh, Death Note is so good.
so like not gonna lie, there was like that group of like 6 or 7 episodes that I'm just like, wait, what?
I know
Like
exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, and I'm just like, did this become a different show? And
Yes.
then it kind of like shifted back in. I'm like, okay, I'm back into this. But like that's such a great anime. And crap, what was the name of it? Erased, I think.
Oh, Erased. Okay.
That was one that I had recommended to me and I watched and I loved that.
That's an
That was
emotional
great.
one.
So, because the thing is, like growing up as a kid, there was only two anime that I watched. Well, more or less one that I spotty watched.
Mhm.
Because like I watched Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! That was about
Yeah.
it.
It's almost like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Sailor Moon. You know that they're anime, but like they it's like easy to group them in a different category than just anime. Like
Well, because
they
like
kind of
let's be real, like all those shows that played on like Saturday mornings where it's like
yeah, sorry.
they were made for American kids.
Yeah.
And I tried watching Pokemon again as an adult, and I got so frustrated because I hated Ash so much.
His voice, Ash's voice in English especially is like so annoying, honestly. Like
He is a horrible, horrible trainer. And I'm just like, your Pokemon get you out of so much crap. And
they
then
really
also the
do.
complete lack of logic because I think I got to, I forget, it probably was like 10, 15 episodes into like the Kanto series, and just like a Charmander beats a Golem because he lights it on fire. And I'm like, no, that's not how this is supposed to work.
Like I've been playing Pokemon for a long time, excuse me.
I'm like, that's not how, like, that's 4 times resistant right there. That's not how this works. And watching Yu-Gi-Oh though, I love Yu-Gi-Oh the Abridged series because it's so right when Kaiba's just like, I do this because I have money. And just like basically you just do whatever the hell it's like magically appear. I make up this BS card out of nowhere that does exactly what I need to do in this very moment. I'm like, this is so stupid. But like those were like the only animes growing up. And like I sporadically watched Dragon Ball Z, which like I feel like that's
Yeah,
more of
Dragon
like
Ball
an
Z.
actual anime compared to Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh. My
Yeah.
brother loves Dragon Ball. So that was a big thing, and I've
Yeah.
watched it with him sometimes. I felt bad because I was
I feel
over.
like a lot of people that like anime watch Dragon Ball first, Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball. So
Yeah, I remember watching. I was over my dad's a couple years ago, and Ethan had Dragon Ball Z on, and literally the whole entire episode was charging, like legitimately just charging up a move, and I'm like, is anything else going to happen in this episode? And that's the
yeah.
interesting thing because anime definitely has a way different pace than things that you watch in mainstream American entertainment because we don't have the patience for that kind of stuff. And we're like grown up to not have the patience for that, which I think more kids should watch more anime. They'll learn to appreciate things more. So there's your public service announcement based off of Lost in the Wasteland. But I appreciated the question. I definitely have been getting more into anime and seeing more. So
Cool.
now,
Aw.
Chelsea,
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on and answering all of
Of
my
course.
lovely questions. I'm going to let you, if there's anything that you want to plug or say to wrap things up.
That's all, I think. Thank you so much again for having me. It's an honor to be part of one of your interviews, and then it was really nice just to talk to you again after years in general.
Of course. And I really appreciate having you coming on, Chelsea. And I appreciate all of you out there for always supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.